Imagine this. It's just past midnight in 1692. The air hangs heavy with smoke and fear. In a small clearing near Salem Village, a woman stands alone, hands bound, eyes defiant, as a crowd gathers in silence. Her name is Bridget Bishop, a tavern keeper, a woman who wore red, laughed too loud, and didn't know her place. Whispers ripple through the crowd. She bewitched my pigs. She cursed my child. She danced with the devil.
A judge's voice echoes coldly. Guilty of witchcraft. The sentence, death.
You might imagine flames rising skyward, licking at her skirts as the crowd watches her burn. But that's a story we like to tell. In truth, Bridget Bishop was hanged, not burned. One of 20 people executed in one of the most infamous moral panics in American history. But the fear, the frenzy, the belief that the devil had come to Massachusetts in the form of an outspoken woman and rebellious children, that part was very, very real. And if I told you nearly 300 years later, the devil returned, but this time he was hiding in a daycare center?
These events are centuries apart. Different people, different places. So why do the patterns look the same? Welcome to our 14th episode titled When Fear Goes Viral, From Salem to Satanic Panic. Today, we tell a story of mass hysteria, false memories, conformity, and moral panics that echo across the centuries.
That's what we're digging into today, how fear and suggestion can spread faster than the plague.
I'm Mike.
I'm Manon.
And we are Planting Thoughts.
It's July 1518 in Strasbourg, France. A plague has broken out, and within 30 days, more than 20 people have begun to dance in the streets. By August, 400 people have joined the silent dance. People began collapsing from exhaustion, and some people said that there were strokes and heart attacks that were claiming people's lives.
Yeah, and these dances weren't pretty. It was a series of convulsions combined with violent thrashing. Their feet would become so swollen that they would begin bleeding in their shoes. There are not any clear records, but at the plague's peak, there were claims that like 15 people were dying per day.
Some historians believe that the dancing was triggered by stress-induced psychosis. Strasbourg was suffering from extreme famine and disease. People were deeply religious and believed in saints like Saint Vitus, who was said to cure people with uncontrollable dancing.
Yeah, that's right. This wasn't just dancing. It was people mentally breaking under pressure. And because they believed in it, their brains made it real. You know, the placebo effect.
It is the year 1692 in Massachusetts. A group of 3 girls have been experiencing behaviors with no natural explanation. One is on the floor barking like a dog, another is screaming, and all 3 are contorting into strange positions. The girls began accusing people of witchcraft, and it spread like wildfire throughout Essex County.
Spectral evidence was used to accuse more than 200 people. In total, 30 people would be found guilty because of things that no one else could see, and 20 would die because of false accusations.
It's the 1980s, and there is a widespread panic that people are practicing satanic ritual abuse. Lorenz Pazder and his patient and eventual wife co-wrote a book, Michelle Remembers, detailing his use of recovered memory therapy. Claims were made that Michelle was tortured, locked in cages, assaulted, and forced to witness even human sacrifices.
Yeah, this story gained a lot of traction, right? And Pazder and Smith even traveled to the Vatican in search of divine help. I think Oprah Winfrey even hosted an episode featuring Smith, among others, who claimed to be a part of the devil worship and sacrificing babies. She treated these stories like they were fact, did not push back on the ideas, and there was a breeding program for human sacrifice, apparently.
The role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons, heavy metal like Ozzy Osbourne, the Smurfs, and video games were attributed to the rise in satanic possession. During this period, 12,000 cases were brought forward with satanic ritual abuse as the main crime.
Yeah, my parents literally burned my Dungeons and Dragons playing materials. I was scarred for life. But that's nothing compared to one of the most notable cases which occurred in Los Angeles at the McMartin preschool. And according to court records, 7 teachers were accused of kidnapping children and animal sacrifice and occultic rituals. Apparently, 41 children had been subjected to improper questioning, which resulted in extremely altered confessions.
One child claimed that they were flushed down the toilets. A young girl claimed she saw witches fly. Even Chuck Norris was accused of being part of this ring.
True.
Thankfully, the jury was not swayed, and the accused were found not guilty.
Yeah, recovered memory therapy is now widely discredited, and good thing. Studies show that suggestion from authority figures can actually lead people to believe in these false memories, especially children. And that's exactly what happened during that satanic panic.
The American Psychological Association eventually issued statements warning that there was no evidence for a widespread satanic conspiracy, and that memory can be manipulated, especially under pressure.
Yeah, so what do all these stories have in common? That's right, you guessed it, psychology. These were both instances where a large group of people all experienced similar symptoms or behaviors without a clear cause. This is known as mass psychogenic illness.
That's mass hysteria for those of you not in the know. It's usually the result of anxiety or fear about things like suspected outbreaks of illnesses or even environmental hazards.
Yeah, social factors like cultural beliefs, media influence can also help mass hysteria spread. The news was a main factor in the 1980s panic. Television networks were sharing these stories of demonic possession, secret witch rituals, and even cannibalism, which caused people to be on edge and, quite frankly, fearful.
And it didn't help that Ed and Lorraine Warren had been investigating these claims for years before this onslaught of the devil made me do it stories. Even today, the alleged hauntings and possessions that they covered are still circulating in the media through this Conjuring series.
With a title like Demonologist and backing from the Vatican, is it really that shocking that Ed and Lorraine were able to create a museum based on these claims? I mean, seriously.
Oh, I mean, it makes sense that you could have a museum like that. So to provide some context to this story, it's vital to know the layout of Essex County when discussing the Salem Witch Trials. Salem was split into two parts, town and village. Salem Village, where these accusations began, is where current-day Danvers is.
The village was a rural farming community that was further inland from the Salem town, a prosperous port where, large fishing and shipbuilding businesses located and things like this. The port was vital for allowing trade between Europe and the New World.
The wealthy flocked to Salem town, while the people in Salem Village were often facing starvation if their harvest didn't go well. The few wealthy families in the village were incredibly influential and way too powerful.
Understanding the vast difference in cultures between these communities is crucial to understanding how we ended up with 2 years of accusations. Salem Village mainly had a population that was Puritan. They were suspicious of the cosmopolitan lifestyle of those living a mere 7 miles away. They were economically dependent on the town and knew that if they set up their own church in the village, they would regain a little bit of control.
I mean, that makes sense. You're going to be paying your taxes to those people. That's your religious leader.
Right. And I mean, what's better than control through religion? Am I right?
Oh, yeah. So they were finally granted the petition to start their own church in 1672. But finding a minister was much harder work than they had began to anticipate.
Yeah, especially since one was accused, found guilty, and hanged for the crime of witchcraft.
So the tensions were already high in this church, but they began to rise, and these ministers would step down very shortly after being appointed. I think the longest lasted about a year. Okay. The villagers' taxes paid the minister, so they could essentially fire the minister by not paying these taxes. And this happened a lot.
There were people in Salem Village, like the Porter family, who wanted to remain connected to the town, right? They felt that it was actually going to be better for the community. Having a positive relationship with the merchants meant that they would be able to do better economically. The Putnam family, alongside Reverend Samuel Parris, advocated for an autonomous village.
So I have done a lot of research on this. I went to Salem recently. So looking through the vast amount of the records from the actual Salem witch trials, you can actually see who accused each person of witchcraft. It's all documented there. Most of the time, it was someone who supported the Putnams,
of course,
casting blame on someone who supported the Porters.
It's like the Hatfields and the McCoys.
Oh, 100%.
Right, just European style. Or not European style, but Salem style.
Early colony style.
Early colony style. Now, this is this economic stress theory, right? And it shows that people will often act against others for their own gain. These accusations were a way to settle personal differences, to push their own agenda, things like this. Accusing someone of witchcraft, it's a way to remove threats.
It's also vital to know the religious beliefs during this time period. Puritans truly believed in the art of witchcraft. They believed that the devil walked among them, unseen but lurking.
Right.
Sin would lead to Satan, and he would attack you using spectral magic. Children were taught from a young age about being thrust into hell and facing eternal punishment.
Not a good place to go.
No, not an ideal scenario. Girls faced even harsher scrutiny, and any kind of transgression, like against the church, against a family, would lead to harsh ridicule in this time period.
Yeah, and they believe that the consequences extended to the entire community. Any misdeed would be punished, right? This meant that anyone who disobeyed quickly dealt with by their neighbors, right? Those who did not attend every church meeting, social outcasts. And those who got in the way were accused and punished.
So now we can get into the gritty details. While the boys of Salem were allowed to participate in things like hunting, girls were not. They were not allowed to have any kind of extra chores or anything. They did what was required. The girls were considered property, and their value came from doing chores and eventually their marriages.
That's disgusting.
Yeah, it's kind of gross.
Well, the Reverend Samuel Parris, he has this daughter named Betty, right? And an orphan niece, Abigail Williams. As was tradition, the two girls were permitted to do very little aside from cooking, cleaning, helping care for the livestock and the like.
So in January 1692, the two girls began behaving really strangely. One would be thrashing and contorting into these bizarre positions that we talked about earlier, while the other was crawling around on the floor, growling and barking at people. The two girls would hide under furniture, making strange noises, and then they would cradle their heads like they were in pain.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a fun party.
No, it didn't seem very cool.
Yeah, well, science has come a long way since 1690. Things like epilepsy and seizures had been documented and studied at the time. But it was documented that these fits were beyond the power of an epileptic fit or natural disease. So they were setting these kids up for failure.
Oh, 100%. They were not doing their due diligence at this point.
No, they weren't.
So speaking of that, Dr. William Griggs was assumed to be caring for the girls. This was the town doctor.
Got it.
He wrote that there was no physical evidence of any ailment. So they trusted the word of the good doctor.
Yeah.
It was evident that something else was wrong with these girls beyond just they have epilepsy or they're having a seizure.
And as we talked about in our previous episode, people are taught to trust authority figures. So when a doctor and a minister both agreed that these behaviors were not natural, it caused a panic to begin to infect the people of Salem. The first three to be accused were Sarah Good, Sarah Osborne, and Tituba.
Tituba. It's okay. I had to learn that in Salem.
And Tituba. Sarah Good was a destitute woman who was accused because she had a reputation for tormenting young children.
Who doesn't?
Sarah Osborne rarely attended church and had remarried an indentured servant. She also had a sizable inheritance. Tituba was an enslaved woman from Barbados and was likely targeted because of her differences.
Abigail Williams and Betty Parris claimed that Tituba had been telling them stories from the Malleus Maleficarum, which is Latin for hammer of witches. She was accused of teaching the girls magic and fortune telling. The girls claimed that they could tell the future by dropping egg whites into a glass of water.
Fun.
Tituba confessed to witchcraft and spent the next 2 years in jail.
Yeah, Tituba was one of the first to be accused of witchcraft, and after improper questioning, she pled guilty to being a witch and accused others of being in her coven.
This was a common pattern. Someone would be found guilty, they would accuse others, and then they would be set free. It's important to know that Tituba stayed in jail until 1693 and refuted that she was a witch after her release, implying a coerced confession and shady interrogation techniques.
Interesting. Yeah, the way jailing worked in Massachusetts was quite a bit different from today's world, right? Prisoners had to pay for their own cell, and the chains they wore, they had to pay for those too. Some cells were larger and could accommodate more people. Others barely were the size of a closet. And multiple people were crammed into them. If you made it out of the trials and were found not guilty, you were still required to pay for your time in Salem Witch Dungeon.
If you were found guilty of witchcraft, there were several options for what your punishment could be. A confession would result in losing all of your property and assets to the church immediately.
So, Reverend Parris.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
You would then be in debt to Salem Village for your stay in the jail. People who were later found innocent not only had their reputation destroyed, but the rest of their lives.
Yeah, but not everyone who was found guilty was let go. I mean, let's be real. People that make mistakes compound them all the time. 19 people were hanged for the crime of witchcraft. One was pressed to death, and 5 others died in jail.
The evidence that they were being convicted on had no basis. Someone could claim that they were seeing Goody Proctor flying on a broomstick or consulting with the devil without anything but their word.
True.
Cotton Mather, a prominent minister, defended the use of spectral evidence. He even published writings where he was talking about these witches and warning against them. His words carried some serious weight. The evidence that they were being convicted on had no basis. Someone could claim that they were seeing Goody Proctor flying on a broomstick or consulting with the devil without anything but their word. Cotton Mathers, a prominent minister, defended the use of the spectral evidence. He even published writings and warnings against witches among them. His words carried some serious weight as he was a judge. He was very important in this community.
Yeah. Another one of those authority figures, right? Where we tend to just sort of believe them because we're trained to from such a young age. Now, the court of Oyer and Terminer was created just for the witch trials. It accepted spectral evidence, which was basically the 1692 version of, I had a bad dream and now you're going to jail. This made it extremely dangerous to be an occultist or an outcast in Salem. Over 200 people were accused. Legal action was taken against 140 people. Of that 140, 19 were hung and one was pressed.
John Proctor's wife, Elizabeth, had been accused of witchcraft by Abigail Williams, the niece of Reverend Parris.
Yep.
When he stood up and refuted these claims, he was accused of being a witch. Others came forward, like his servant Mary Warren, who claimed she'd been beaten for trying to put up a prayer bill. It's kind of like a little thing where you read the morning prayers from.
Okay.
And then was forced to touch the devil's book.
Got it. Proctor immediately went to work trying to prove his innocence, right? Which is kind of hard to do when you're being accused of dancing with the devil in the pale moonlight. But you got to try.
He also challenged the validity of the spectral evidence and the court itself. A petition was created with 32 other families that signed in his favor, claiming that they believed that he was a good Christian man.
Okay.
The Proctors were tried together on August 5th, 1962, and were both found guilty. They were sentenced to death by hanging.
Before you ask, no, there were no burnings at the stake in Salem. European witch hunts did often include things like burning at the stake, stoning, and drowning, but our accused were hung in Salem at what is known as Proctor's Ledge.
So it's interesting if you think about this name, Proctor's Ledge. That's their last name. By the time of these complaints, there were 141 filed.
Okay.
12 of those complaints alone were against the Proctor family. And I believe he lost several other family members during these witch trials.
Like I said, Hatfield and McCoy. Now, Elizabeth was pregnant at the time of her sentencing, so her sentence was delayed until the child was born, right? You don't want to drown an unborn baby for her mommy. It was believed that while the mother may be a witch, there was hope for the child. So you got to spare the little guy.
Well, John wasn't so lucky. He was hanged on August 19th. Elizabeth would give birth after the trials had ended, and she was actually released. She went home to nothing, though, since the colony had sold off their estate while they were imprisoned.
Nice. Now, Giles Corey was an 81-year-old farmer who had once accused his wife of witchcraft, actually. Corey had a contentious relationship with his neighbors, right? He'd been arrested and tried for things like petty theft, arguments with everyone, drunkenness, these types of things.
So John Proctor actually stood as a witness at one of these trials where Corey beat one of his indentured servants. The man was so horrifically injured, and he wasn't taken to a doctor for 10 days. When he finally was taken to the doctor, he died. And Proctor was there.
Yeah, Proctor had heard Corey bragging about his crime, and he actually testified against him. When Proctor's house was set on fire, he accused Corey, who sued him. It was not until the trial that one of Proctor's sons confessed to the fire.
I mean, what are boys going to do except set their house on fire?
Boys will be boys.
They'll just do that little thing. It's crazy. So when the accusation was turned back on him, Corey refused to speak. If you confessed to witchcraft, your property was immediately taken by the colony of Massachusetts. Giles Corey had a son, and he did not want him to lose the sizable inheritance.
Yeah, so instead of entering a plea, he actually remained silent, and Sheriff George Corwin came up with this terrible plan. Corey was an incredibly large man, right? And he had been a farmer his entire life, so, he had that farmer strength. He was 6'4", really strong, right? And in order to get a confession, they would take large rocks and crush Corey.
This is a form of torture called pressing. The public would come and watch as he was slowly buried alive. So you also have a humiliation in there on top of this. Yeah. He was asked for his plea 3 times, and his response each time was more weight.
Now, this is a guy that I can get behind.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that is a boss move. More weight.
Yeah, and crushed him to death in front of the people of Salem.
Well, Corey survived for 3 days before his lungs collapsed under the weight. His property went to his sons.
That's good. And can we have like a small brevity break here?
Sure.
Because this is a little bit of a deep talk.
Okay.
So Giles Corey's children's names. We start off really, really strong.
All right.
We got Martha. We got Margaret. We have Deliverance.
Nice.
Elizabeth and John.
Okay. Can you imagine being Martha while your sister is Deliverance? I mean, this seems totally unfair.
That's probably how my siblings feel with me being Manon.
True.
So the witch trials started in 1692 and finally ended in 1693 when a new charter was established for the colony. The governor of Massachusetts, William Phips, stopped the witch hunt once his wife was accused of being one.
Of course, yes. Little nepotism.
Oh yeah, as soon as my wife is accused, it becomes an issue. So everyone who was awaiting trial and those who had been found guilty were set free under the governor's new orders.
Okay. So this tale of accusations against neighbors that resulted in a year-long literal witch hunt does not have a clear cause. There are theories ranging from poisoning, right, which would result in vivid hallucinations, to actual witches in Salem. Maybe they ate the wrong mushrooms or something like that. The simpler answer is psychology. When these girls started throwing accusations against their fellow villagers, it was very easy for other people to join in and get on the bandwagon.
I mean, this was a period of great uncertainty in Salem. Smallpox had just ravaged the people. There was constant threat of invasion from the Native Americans and the French from the north and the south. And they truly believed that the devil was lying in wait for them.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the studies like the line judgment experiment that we talked about last time. When asked to find a certain position on a line, people were more likely to follow what everyone else was doing. And this idea of groupthink and, wanting to fit in is not just some new thing. People were doing this hundreds of years ago. People want to be liked. And if part of that is accusing one of your neighbors of consorting with the devil, hey, look, some people are going to fold for that like.
So years after the trials ended, the colony of Massachusetts realized just how wrong it had gone. In 1697, a day of public fasting and soul searching was held to ask for God's forgiveness for the late tragedy.
Yes. Forgive us for killing all of our neighbors.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I accused 140 people of being a witch.
Some of the judges even admitted that they were wrong. Like this one guy, Samuel Sewell, right? He stands in this church and publicly confesses his guilt, asking God to pardon him for his role in the executions.
In 1711, the colony passed a bill that restored the rights and reputations of many of the accused. Okay. Families were given some financial compensation, but by then it was too little too late. They've already lost everything. So
yeah, and it took until like 2001, over 300 years later, for all of the victims to be officially exonerated by the state. That's how long it took to undo 1 year of mass hysteria.
You have an incredibly rigid society. You add tension with a neighboring town, corrupt authority figures, and a dash of drama, and you have a powder keg waiting to go. Decades later, the Massachusetts government issued formal apologies, and surviving families were offered symbolic reparations. But the damage was done, and it took over 250 years for the state to officially clear all the names.
Yeah, okay, so psychologists like Stanley Milgram, we talked about him a couple of times, a couple different shows, right? He really did show how far people will go when told to by an authority. And I mean, if you look at the Germans, right, during World War II, one of their main excuses for carrying out the Holocaust, for instance, was, I was just following orders. And in Milgram's experiments, people would keep shocking others just because this guy in a lab coat would tell them to. And I mean, that's exactly what happened here, right? If a minister or judge said someone was a witch, people believed it.
And that's not just unique to Salem. In Strasbourg, people danced themselves to death because they believed it was a religious curse. In the Satanic Panic, families were torn apart because someone with a clipboard said a child was remembering being in a cult. It's easy to look back and think that would never happen today, but mass hysteria still happens. Just look at TikToks or social media-driven health scares.
TikToks? Those have to do with mass hysteria too?
Oh yeah, think about it. If everyone is doing something.
Kids, like I've said for years, get off TikTok. Unless it's to watch Planting Thoughts.
Yeah, if you're watching us, please keep going.
Yeah, and we have this anti-vax movement in our country, right? We have the QAnon. I mean, psychology hasn't changed, just the platforms that spread panic.
So we've seen how fear, belief, and authority can twist reality, turning neighbors into enemies and stories into sentences. But here's what we want to know.
What would you have done? Would you have spoken up? Or would you have stayed silent like everyone else?
Mass hysteria doesn't always look like witches or demons. Sometimes it wears the face of someone you trust.
Yeah, so the next time you hear something unbelievable, Ask yourself, is it truth? Or is it terror spreading in disguise?
If you enjoyed this episode of Planting Thoughts, make sure to join the millions of others who have already subscribed, 5-starred, and commented.
And don't forget to spread the word about our lovely little show.
But even more importantly, keep questioning, keep digging into life's little stories.
And remember,
keep planting thoughts.